Good evening. It's Saturday, the 29th of November. You're tuned in to our 6 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this evening: with everything running like clockwork, South Korea received a large shipment of Russian coal from a North Korean port earlier today. It's hoped the rare movement of trade between the two Koreas could be the first step towards stronger economic relations and all-round friendlier ties. Park Ji-won reports.
Around 40,000 tons of Russian coal arrived in the South Korean port city of Pohang on Saturday morning. After its extraction in western Siberia, the coal was transported to Russia's border town of Khasan. The supplies were then transported to the North Korean port city of Najin via a roughly 50-kilometer-long cross-border railway. The coal then left Najin on a Chinese ship bound for Pohang on Thursday. The southeastern port city is where South Korea's largest steelmaker POSCO is located. This is the first batch of a test-run coal shipment sent as part of the so-called Najin-Khasan project, a trilateral trade agreement among both Koreas and Russia. The project was proposed at a South Korea-Russia summit in Seoul last year. POSCO currently imports its Russian coal by ship through Vladivostok, but this new route could cut the company's coal import costs by up to 15%. The South Korean steelmaker says, however, that it needs to first check the quality of the shipment and further assess its economic feasibility before it makes a final decision about making greater use of the new route. Regarding concerns that the project violates South Korean sanctions that prohibit any trade with the North, Seoul's Unification Ministry says the sanctions do not apply in this case as investments are made through a third country. This comes as Russia's minister in charge of East Asian trade development, Alexander Galushka, was in Seoul this week for talks with South Korea's Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae on ways to further boost trilateral cooperation among the two Koreas and Russia. Galushka's visit is significant as he met with North Korea's Special Envoy Choi Ryong-hae when he visited Russia earlier this month. There's hope inter-Korean relations could improve on the back of deeper trilateral economic cooperation with Russia. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Trufnev is also scheduled to visit Seoul in the coming weeks for talks on economic cooperation, including joint investment in North Korea. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
North Korea has once again slammed the United States for helping to push through a UN resolution condemning Pyongyang for human rights abuses. An editorial published in its state-run Nodong Shimbun newspaper on Saturday says the United States manipulated the resolution to try and make North Korea look bad, and the accusations were false. It calls on the North Korean people and the military to never forget that the US is North Korea's main enemy. The editorial also stresses that Washington is using the human rights issue as a way to attack North Korea because all attempts to do so politically and economically have failed. The latest statement comes roughly a week after the UN adopted a landmark resolution urging the Security Council to refer North Korea's leaders to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. An elderly Korean victim of Japan's wartime system of sexual slavery has held an awareness event in Paris, calling on France and its citizens to try and help resolve this issue. 87-year-old Gil Won-ok was joined by dozens of Korean activists in front of the Eiffel Tower on Friday local time as she called on the Japanese government to take responsibility for its past wrongdoings. Gil was taken to a Japanese military brothel in China when she was just 13 years old. All of the participants will hold an international conference on the sex slavery issue at a university in Paris later on this Saturday. Tens of thousands of Asian women and girls, including a great many Korean women, were forced into sexual slavery by Japan before and during World War II. Oil prices remain in free fall after OPEC nations this week agreed to keep their oil supply steady despite falling global demand. US crude plunged a staggering 10% in its biggest one-day drop in over 5 years on Friday, and Brent crude dropped below $70 a barrel. US West Texas Intermediate light crude ended the trading week at slightly over $65 a barrel. over the past 5 months or so, Brent has lost about 40% of its value as increasing US shale oil output has created a very serious glut amid a period of sluggish global growth. Analysts say OPEC's decision to maintain its production target of 30 million barrels a day was made to pressure rival producers in the US who need moderate international oil prices to break even. Now, we probably won't ever be able to swing from building to building like Spiderman, but researchers in the United States have developed a way for us to potentially climb up walls just like the comic book hero. Our Lee Ji-eun has this report.
Watch this man climb up a glass wall like Spiderman. How is he doing this? By wearing a pair of special hand pads. A research team at Stanford University was inspired by the way geckos climb and made these pads mimicking the gecko's sticky foot. These adhesives, made up of clingy hair-like nanofibers, employ the same attractive and repulsive forces between molecules that geckos use. With these pads on, a person would be able to attach to glass surface and release at will, no matter how heavy he or she might be. Earlier this year, a team of scientists at the University of Massachusetts also developed a new reusable adhesive called GeckSkin, based on the feet of the gecko.
Is to really look at actually the whole organism, to look at not just the hairs, but also to look at the underlying anatomy, look at the tendons and the soft tissue, the skin that underlie this foot structure, because it really is a whole foot. It's not just the hairs.
These pads are also aimed at helping soldiers scale buildings and other obstacles without the need for ropes or ladders. Lee Ji-eun, Arirang News.
Now, there's been yet another shocking terrorist attack in Nigeria. At least 120 people have been killed and hundreds more wounded in a bomb attack on the central mosque of Kano in the north of the country. Reports say gunmen set off 3 bombs and fired on worshippers in an assault that bore the hallmarks of Islamist Boko Haram militants. Local residents believe the attack was a reprisal for a regional leader's call to arms against the terror group. Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan said he would leave no stone unturned tracking down the perpetrators, and he urged Nigerians to confront what he called their common enemy. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also condemned that horrific attack. Now, looking to clean up their almost apocalyptic levels of air pollution in their biggest cities, China is edging closer to passing its toughest ever air pollution prevention law. Once enforced, the law will set strict new rules for coal burning, industry, automobile and dust emissions. Those found to be breaking regulations or tampering with monitoring data will also face heavier punishments. Chinese state media says the changes include making local governments more responsible for air pollution in their region. Watchers say China has been forced to act as pollution has become a major public health hazard. You can see the air there. It has also rendered large parts of China's farmland unfit for use and some of its water supplies unfit for human consumption. Now, shifting gears now, and the life of your average student in Korea is a very tough one. Korean kids often study for well over 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. It's hard to fathom for people outside of Korea, but many here see it as the only way to secure the best grades and therefore the best career prospects. But there is a new trend emerging that gives kids a chance to exercise their bodies, not only their minds, in the hope they could potentially make it as professional athletes. Son Jung-in reports.
Kang Sa-yeon is a student in Sungmyeon Girls Middle School, which is well known for its strong basketball team. A sport that Pang first took up out of curiosity has now become a potential career choice.
I used to play basketball as a hobby, but I have become even more fond of it, and now I'm training to become a professional.
Pang, like many other athletic students her age in her neighborhood, discovered her dream while attending a local youth sports club in Yongin, Gyeonggi-do Province. The gym fills up with students in the afternoon after school lets out.
Here we learn techniques that we can't learn elsewhere. The classes are very fun and we have chances to compete against other clubs too.
The club, supported by a professional team based in the city, produced 11 elite athletes over the course of 3 years. Schools and professional teams that face a tough time finding young talents say these clubs are valuable assets and are willing to fully support them.
These youth clubs have become a great resource, not only to strengthen the bodies and minds of young students, but also to find their hidden talents. We plan to continue supporting these clubs.
Sports are considered an integral part of society that brings about physical and psychological benefits. With the number of young athletes dwindling every year, supporting local sports clubs may be an answer to discovering and fostering more elite athletes. 손정인, Arirang News.
And finally, before we go, leaving you with a brief look at the weather here in Korea, and it's been a relatively mild day across the peninsula with the daytime highs above the seasonal average. Sunday, though, will feel colder than today, and there will be light showers for the central region in the afternoon. And be aware, temperatures are going to plunge on Monday, so be sure to enjoy the relatively mild conditions while we have them with us. Now, for our overseas viewers, let's take a look at the weather conditions in your part of the world. And that's all we have for now. There are many more stories online, so head over to our website to check them out. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday wherever you're watching us, and stay tuned, of course, to Arirang TV. We'll be back again with our next newscast at 10 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.